If Fields had the same same stability, system, franchise, coaching, etc., that Hurts has, do you think Fields would be as good or better than Hurts potentially? I don't know. I haven't seen enough from Fields to know. I do know that he's the most dangerous running threat at the quarterback position, or at least he was last year. Can he be developed into a passer? Something is missing in Chicago. Would it work for him with the Eagles? Would it work for him with the Chiefs? I think all the time about past quarterbacks who flamed out. Was it them or was it their circumstances? Was it something about their unwillingness to put in the time necessary, that they hit a ceiling that they weren't able to get through physically or mentally? The game was just too fast and it never slowed down. Their arm just wasn't strong enough. They didn't process fast enough. They just couldn't throw it accurately enough. Is it that? Or is it these coaches did not take the lump of clay that college football gave to them and mold it into a great quarterback, recognizing the strengths, recognizing the weaknesses, designing the offense to get the most out of what the player does well, to conceal the things he doesn't do well, to help him get better at the things he doesn't do well so he has no weaknesses. That's why I'm an opponent of the draft, even though it's never going away. If you're a quarterback, a great young quarterback, where you start your career has a huge impact on how your career goes. Think back to 1999. If Achilles Smith had landed with the Eagles and Donovan McNabb had landed with the Bengals, would Smith have become a fringe Hall of Fame candidate? Would Smith have become a guy that went to 4 straight NFC championship games? Would Donovan McNabb have washed out of the NFL as fast as he washed out of the NFL after he left the tutelage of Andy Reid? So I think it's a fair question. I just think it's too early to know whether or not Justin Fields would be Jalen Hurts and whether or not Jalen Hurts would be Justin Fields if you flip them. But in a time when we got some great quarterbacks approaching the NFL, I sure hope one of them becomes the one that lights the way for the others, that says, I'm not going to go to a bad situation. I'm not going to tie one hand behind my back as I try to make the most out of my NFL career. I can hope that will happen because I want as many great quarterbacks as possible to come to the NFL and flourish and thrive. And what it does, if you're a bad team and you get stiff-armed by that quarterback that you wanted to draft because your coaching isn't good enough, because your front office isn't good enough, because the team isn't good enough, because the organization is dysfunctional, nothing like that kind of accountability to get teams to try to become dysfunctional or less dysfunctional or sell the team to someone who'll be able to turn things around. You get a better league. You get a more competitive league if some of these bad teams realize they can't just sit back and be bad and hope that eventually they're going to find their savior in the form of a Joe Burrow. Curtis Schumann, or maybe Schumann. Any word from the league if they will stop showing 2 games at the same time on Mondays just to boost their ratings numbers? I think there's one more game this year with 2 simultaneous overlapping Monday night games. I don't like it. I've made that clear. I like 1 game at a time, and I definitely don't like having 2 games on and they go split screen on one of them, and that one is ahead of the other game that I have. I don't like that. 1 game at a time. And if you feel compelled to have overlapping games because you want to lump all of the ratings numbers into one bucket, which is what ESPN and ABC are doing. 22 million total viewers over 2 games. Okay. Think about your customers. Think about their needs. Think about what they want. Have they done any focus groups or polling about that? I can't imagine that diehard football fans, ardent football fans, would be happy with having to watch 2 games at once because you feel like you never get the full experience. I want to watch all of 1 game. Give them to me back-to-back on Monday night. Give me Monday night, Tuesday night. Give me Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Give me a game every night of the week except Friday and Saturday because under the Sports Broadcasting Act of 1961, that's not permitted lest the NFL lose its broadcast antitrust exemption. I'll take a game any night I can get one. I don't like having 2 games on at once in prime time. Throughout the day on Sunday, that's the way football is. Prime time, I want 1 game. Another one from Curtis Schumann. Whatever happened with the Naheem Hines situation in Buffalo? Was it the rumors of them holding pay because of the jet ski accident? Are we all good here? I think as it stands, the Bills aren't paying him. They put him on the non-football injury list. He's got litigation that was filed against whoever it was that ran into him while he was on that jet ski or whatever it's called. Somebody sent me an email saying it's really not a jet ski. That's a specific type. It was this, that, watercraft. I don't know. Regardless, he got injured away from work. When you're put on the non-football injury or illness list, the team, if it wants to, cannot pay you. That's what the Bills decided to do. And Hines has the ability to pursue what he would have made from the Bills, from whoever it was that caused him to be injured and not be able to play. Here's Jeremy Dodd. Would the owners and the NFLPA support games on Wednesday and Thursday with the teams having a bye prior to those games? The league week would start on Wednesday and get 16 standalone games during the week, plus the players get extended rest prior and afterwards. I have an idea, and I want to sit down and map it out. Every year about this time, there's an argument about short week football, about doing it in a way so the teams that play on Thursday night always have the prior Sunday off. Now, the problem that creates is late in the year, it screws up the whole flexing thing, which is now a big component. I haven't done it because I look at it as a waste of time. To try to come up with an idea that would make it more equitable, that would make it safer, that would give teams an opportunity to be fully prepared for these games instead of going Sunday to Thursday, it's a waste of time because the NFL is not going to do it. The NFL has secured all permissions from the union to proceed Sunday, Thursday, Sunday, Thursday. They've now got multiple teams that are playing at least 2 short week games, although the Bears are one of them this year. Congratulations for that, NFL and Amazon. But I don't see them changing anything. It's not worth the time to propose a solution to a problem that the NFL refuses to acknowledge. And they won't acknowledge it. They won't. They think it's fine because the injury rate on Sundays is no different than the injury rate on Thursdays, which is misleading, which is gaslighting, which is not an accurate depiction of whether or not it makes sense to have NFL players play a game Sunday and a game Thursday and be fully prepared to play a game Thursday and be ready to play on Thursday if they have an injury that would have allowed them to play on Sunday, but they can't play on Thursday. There's a lot of factors that go into it, but it doesn't matter. That's the point. It doesn't matter. The NFL is going to continue to do what it's doing, and now it has the power to flex in some games late in the year, and I think we will see it happen because when you look at the schedule this year, I wrote a post about this right before I started taping this episode of PFT PM. It's not good. After this week, look away. There are some bad Thursday night games this year. It'll be interesting to see what Al Michaels has to say about them during the broadcast. Tom Marshall, a Red Zone UK, did Mike McDaniels' decision to leave points on the field actually twist the dagger a little deeper into Sean Payton and the Broncos? I don't think so. And look, I thought maybe Mike McDaniel was flashing a middle finger to Payton and also to Stephen Ross, the owner of the Dolphins, because Ross wanted to hire Payton last year. Ross wanted to do the Sean Payton, Tom Brady package deal. The tampering that occurred because of that cost McDaniel and GM Chris Greer a first-round pick this year. And I asked Raheem Mostert about it after the game, whether he'd heard any talk about McDaniel trying to stick it to Payton because they wanted to hire Payton. And Mostert genuinely and authentically, I believe, said, that's the first time ever hearing that. He sounded surprised. So if McDaniel was trying to stick it to Payton, he kept his mouth shut about it. And I don't think that not kicking the 3 points makes it worse. Because it still saved Payton and the Broncos from giving up more points than anyone in league history in a regular season game. Dr. J144, we talk a lot about how soon can you tell when a quarterback just doesn't have it. 1 year, 2 years. What about head coaches? Matt Eberflus, for instance, is 3-17. How much more do we need to see to know he isn't a head coach? Well, ultimately that comes down to what the Bears are willing to do. But a very real reality, I'll go with that, in the NFL is something that comes from one of the chapters of Playmakers, the Peter Principle, a satirical point articulated in a novel in the late 60s that we all rise to the level of our own incompetence. Because think about it. You keep getting promoted. Hey, you did a job well, you get promoted. Do that job well, you get promoted. Do that job well, you get promoted. You do that job well, you get promoted. All right, time for the next job, time for the big jump, time for the thing that changes everything. Oh, you're not as good as you were at other jobs, at this job. That's what happens in the NFL. Coordinator and head coach, very different jobs. You position yourself to be a head coach by being a great coordinator, even though the skill sets are entirely different. And at some point, yeah, the conclusion is made, this guy just can't get it done. How long are the Bears willing to be patient? What kind of players can they get? It all comes down to the players. You suddenly become a much better coach if you have great players. Like Dick Vermeil said when he was inducted to the Hall of Fame. I became a much smarter coach when I got Marshall Faulk on my team. Look at Robert Saleh in New York. Things were great with Aaron Rodgers. Now you got Joe Namath calling for Saleh to be fired. Why? Because one guy got injured. That's it. Great player makes all the difference in the world. Stuart McCulloch, what's wrong with the Cowboys Red Zone offense? Is it the difference in play calling between Mike McCarthy and Kellen Moore, personnel, psychological, or just a blip? I think it's too early to come to any broad conclusions. We're only 3 games in. What happens, though, with some of these early season trends, they can become a thing because the team starts thinking about it, the opponents start thinking about it. Maybe you try a little too hard to fix it, and it gets worse, and it gets worse, and it gets worse. But it's definitely an issue. I don't know whether it's going to last or not. We just need to talk about something based on the first 3 weeks. And for the Cowboys, that's one of the biggest problems that stands out for a team that otherwise is in pretty good shape. Another one from Tom Marshall, Arizona, UK. I'm heading to Jags versus Falcons on Wembley, or at Wembley on Sunday. Who needs the win more? I think the Jaguars need it more. They're 1-2. They weren't supposed to be. They're in a tough conference, not necessarily a tough division, but they can't afford to get in too deep of a hole. They've got the Colts coming up in a few weeks after they get back from London. But they need to get that spark. Last year, it was the loss to the Broncos in London that gave Trevor Lawrence and the Jaguars the spark they needed to get to the playoffs. They're underachieving so far this year. There were people who pegged them as the number 1 seed because of the ease of schedule. The fact that we were kind of overlooking this team that seemed to be on the rise. Isn't that how it goes for the Jaguars? Every time it seems like they're on the rise, the bottom falls out. We'll see what happens, but they need this one more. Falcons are in a weak division in the weaker conference. They can afford to lose this one and still find a way to contention. If the Jaguars fall to 1-3, and then the Bills game, if that doesn't go well, you're 1-4, you got a problem coming home to face the Colts, a team that was beating the Jaguars in the second half after that DeForest Buckner fumble return for a touchdown, and it looked like the Colts were going to win that game back in week 1. RB Roughnecks, a.k.a. Hunter Wallace. What do you think, or who do you think is the first veteran, not rookie coach fired? I think it's in order of heat. Kevin Stefanski, Matt Eberflus, Brandon Staley, Mike McCarthy, Sean McDermott, Riverboat Ron may get axed just because of new ownership, but maybe not until the offseason out of respect. I don't know who's going to get fired during the season. I still think it's too early to make those kinds of conclusions. Brandon Staley got a win, which is helpful. The Browns are looking pretty good right now. If they can play more like they did week 1 and 3 and not week 2, Kevin Stefanski won't be in trouble. I don't know what Kevin Warren, the new president of the Bears, is going to do about Matt Eberflus. Could he be fired during the season? Who would take over for him? It's just a bad situation all around. I don't think Jerry Jones fires Mike McCarthy during the season. There isn't really anyone that stands out to me as this person is in grave danger of being fired this year. There's only 4 teams left that haven't won a game, and I think all 4 of those coaches are in good shape. Kevin O'Connell, Sean Payton, Frank Reich. Matt Eberflus is the only one that I would be concerned about. And with all the embarrassments off the field, that could make it all come together and create a situation where the Bears do make an in-season change. Dilip Rao, a.k.a. Leapers 500, is George Payton in trouble? He's the GM of the Broncos, obviously. Who are the hot GM candidates as of now, and who would you like to see get a real chance? I don't know who the hot GM candidates are as of right now, and I try to avoid the business of getting behind relatively obscure front office people. I'll leave that to others in the media who are engaged in a thinly veiled effort to enhance their own access or to trade favors, get information, whatever the case may be, by championing the cause of somebody who's trying to become a GM. I'd like to think, well, not that I have anything against George Payton, but I'd like to think there's some scrutiny being applied and that he could be in some sort of jeopardy with Sean Payton. There were rumors that after the draft, Sean Payton was going to bring in his own GM. If what's happening in Denver is a result of the decisions made by personnel, at some point the guy in charge of personnel is going to be accountable. We'll see. But after what happened on Sunday in Miami, I'd say everybody's in trouble in Denver if this continues. the easiest path is to end it and get a win in Chicago, try to turn this thing around. Amused to death. Mike, you said the Jets don't have what it would cost to get Kirk Cousins. What would it take? Isn't his deal up at the end of the year? Seems like a great fit for both. It's not a great fit for the Vikings. They're still alive. And even if they keep losing, someone told me earlier, and I need to check on this, the Vikings have never been 0-5. If they lose to the Panthers, 0-5 is looking pretty likely because the Chiefs come to town. But you go from Kirk Cousins to Nick Mullins or Jaron Hall, all of a sudden those close games aren't going to be as close, and it's not going to be because you're winning them. I don't think the Vikings, even though they're ready to move on from Kirk Cousins after the season and would only get compensatory draft pick consideration for him in 2025, I don't think that makes the Vikings ready to trade him now. And why would the Jets want to do it? What would it take? I don't know, but the Jets have a second-round pick and a first-round pick tied up as the condition of this Aaron Rodgers trade, and we know it's going to be the second-round pick, but you can't start sending other picks. You just can't do that. I think they're both tied up until the regular season ends and the condition of playing time at 65% becomes official. So it's just pie in the sky. It's not going to happen. And Cousins has a no trade clause. Maybe he'd want to do it. I don't know. Do you think he wants to jump into the dysfunction that is the Jets right now? The offensive line is bad. It's worse than the Vikings offensive line. I'm not sure he'd want that. His best play is to have the best season possible he can statistically and hope that leads to a huge payday on the open market. He's not going to compete for a Super Bowl. I don't know that he ever will, but he can go get paid a hell of a lot of money by someone else like he has over and over again throughout his career. John Kasich, with the excessive amount of fights happening each week, should NFL teams consider adding visiting team sections similar to college football? I just think they should do a better job, John, of securing the stadium. More police or other security personnel. Prevent these fights. Get involved more quickly. Be responsive when you get a complaint about someone's behavior. Nip these things in the bud. Be monitoring all the camera angles. Have more cameras there so there's somebody sitting in a room looking at all the cameras for any sign that something is moving in the wrong direction so you can deploy someone to go break it up before somebody gets injured or killed. And I don't care if there's visiting team sections or not. You go online, you buy your tickets. Look, these visiting teams are taking over stadiums because the home team's fans are selling their tickets. I suspect there's going to be a lot of Chiefs fans on Sunday night. How many Jets fans do you think are going to want to go to that game when Patrick Mahomes and company come to town and kick the shit out of the Jets when they could just sell those tickets to Chiefs fans who are in the New York area who will travel to New York to go see the game? So I don't think you can ever solve it other than with better security and a greater recognition of the responsibility to take care of your paying customers. We talked about that last week on PFT PM. I'm looking at the rest of these questions because I need to wrap this up. Picture me scrolling. Why don't more teams carry a backup quarterback with opposing skills if they're starting quarterback? How often does a backup game manager type come in and steady the ship successfully for a month? Do you think these quarterbacks would be more successful in short-term spot starts or mid-game fill-ins? I'm a firm believer in having a backup with a skill set that is identical as possible to the starter, because you can't just think about what it means for the quarterback. You got to think about what it means for everybody else on offense. And if you're just plugging a new guy in who does the same things as the starter, it's easier for the pass catchers, it's easier for the blockers, it's easier for the running backs, it's easier for everyone. So my preference is have a backup or two who can do exactly what and play the same way your starter plays. Amused to death. Hey, Mike, any chance we can rename the Eagles tush push to brotherly shove? Maybe then it will be better received nationally. I don't care about the name. I don't like the play. I think it takes advantage of the rules. It capitalizes on a rule change that wasn't meant to allow shoving a quarterback past the line to gain. I think this is the last year it's going to be around because I think that 24 owners will come together and say enough. The other teams aren't doing it. The Eagles are the ones doing it, and the Eagles may not like it, but I think it's going to be taken away. I still think the Eagles will be very good at quarterback sneaks, but going to take away that element of pushing from behind. Dr. J144, should we expect an outside the lines type report on Alan Williams in like a year? I'm not satisfied with the resolution of that. It definitely feels like the Bears are hiding something from us. I look at it this way. If there is something bigger going on, we'll find out about it when charges are filed. Some way, somehow, there will be further activities that make it clear whatever it was that was going on. And, you know, on one hand, it's a private matter. On the other hand, you take a very public job with a very public organization where a lot of people are invested, a lot of people care. The idea of brushing it all under the rug and keeping it all secret, I don't think it's acceptable, especially in an age where we should be embracing transparency in all aspects of professional sport because of all the money they get for their stadiums and because of the fact that people are now gambling legally on every pro sport. Fargo 800, do you think Mac Jones should be punished for his actions against Sauce Gardner? If so, suspension or fine? Well, it's already been leaked by the NFL to one of the NFL employees who cover the NFL that Mac Jones won't be suspended. I don't know if they see enough to fine him. You know, if we give any credence to what we heard last week about Deshaun Watson, well, we couldn't tell. What was it? It wasn't that we couldn't tell with certainty. They said it was something that it wasn't. They said it was inadvertent when he shoved away the official, which is just bullcrap. They couldn't tell with 100% certainty that Trent Williams of the 49ers punched an opponent in the face, even though I don't know what more you needed to see. These camera angles, you could say, if you want to give this guy a pass, are inconclusive. But it keeps happening with Mac Jones. He gets accused of something, and there's an explanation. Then he gets accused of something, and there's an explanation. At some point, the guy isn't being persecuted. At some point, the sheer number of accusations should tell people of sound mind and reasonable disposition there's a problem with this person. They're doing something they shouldn't be doing. Boy, that could apply to other things. Just the sheer number of credible, plausible, legitimate accusations. It all can't be a witch hunt. And at some point, they found a witch. And Mac Jones may want to wear that pointy hat before he passes along to anyone else. Because I saw enough in the context of the video that's out there, even though it's not 100% certain. He did what he did. Why would Sauce Gardner make that up? Why would he make that up? I think he did it. I think he's got a dirty streak. And until he gets busted for it, he's going to keep doing it. Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.